The great Ukrainian blame game is about to begin. I'm sorry. It's just so damn funny, you know. All of these people, these liars, these insane warmongers. They see that their little scheme in Ukraine is going tits up, and so now they're scrambling to blame somebody else. And you can see it in the little clues. Like I said yesterday, you know, if you're a Washingtonologist, as I am a self-proclaimed Washingtonologist. I study all the little clues that tell us what's really going on in the regime. Yeah, well, what's going on is that, see, a day or two ago, the New York Times posted an article saying that the American intelligence services had no idea what was going on in Ukraine, and so far as, you know, military strategy and all the rest of it. They were just like, you know, we have no clue whatsoever, you know, which is a complete and utter bald-faced lie. Because a lot of people have said, Sotavose and some other people on the fringes who have confirmation, who have ins with the people of the narrative, as we should call them. Well, the story is basically that ever since this war started, it's been wire-guided from Washington. Yeah, the overall strategy and the operational factor, the operational strategy of this war has been carried out essentially from the Pentagon. Yeah, absolutely. Somebody in Brussels, you know, is basically the liaise. The Brussels, the NATO headquarters, of course, is the liaise with the Ukrainian armed forces. But the whole thing has been run out of Washington via Brussels. The Ukrainians haven't had really full control of their own army. They haven't. That's pretty much of a fact, okay? Now, at this time, you could say, oh, that's only rumor. Oh, that's not really confirmed. Sources! But we all know better, okay? The catastrophic defense of the Donbass, which has played right into what the Russians were up to, which is the destruction of the Ukrainian armed forces. That's their stated objective. And the whole stand and fight strategy, which was ideated by Washington and implemented by Brussels and carried out by the poor soldiers of the Ukrainian armed forces, well, it's leading to this defeat. And so now everybody's trying to figure out whom to blame. The great Ukrainian blame game. What is going on right now politically? Well, the Biden administration has realized that the whole thing is tits up, and they're going to have to find somebody to blame. And of course, as typical in all administrations where they have a losing war, they point to the intelligence community, and they say it's an intelligence failure, that the intelligence community didn't really give the political leadership the actual information, and that's why it's all the intelligence community. And this New York Times article is, of course, getting ahead of that narrative because it was obviously leaked by intelligence people in Washington and put it there. And there are going to be more of these little stories saying that the intelligence agencies, they didn't do nothing, you know. And the idea is going to be to blame the Ukrainian armed forces. And the intelligence agencies, you know, pretty soon, you know, in a day or two more, they're going to start saying that, oh, we gave them all the intelligence, satellites, and all kinds of stuff, and we had these AWACS planes flying around and telling them what to do, and they didn't follow our intelligence, so we're not at fault. They're at fault. They're the ones fighting the war and fucking it up. And so, of course, the Ukrainian armed forces aren't going to stand still for that. And they're going to say, no, it's not us. We wanted to pull out of Severodonetsk or wherever else they're going to be encircled. And it was Zelensky. Zelensky did it. And Zelensky is going to be like, no, it's not my fault. I did what you guys told me to do. It's not my fault. And there's going to be this silent agreement between all of these despicable people. And they're going to blame Zelensky. Now, you know, poor bastard, but I feel no sympathy for him. He's a thief. He's a liar. He's a murderer. He is. He's a guy who claims to be a Democrat who outlaws every opposition political party in Ukraine. Yeah, I mean, he's a piece of shit as far as I'm concerned. But he's going to be the sacrificial lamb. You wait now. In the next few days and weeks, as the catastrophe in the Donbass becomes readily apparent, you're going to start to see more and more stories saying how Zelensky is not such a saint. It's not Saint Zelensky, no, because they'll start talking about the fact that he has a $500 million fortune, that he has these mansions in Italy and Miami and wherever else. They're going to start talking about how he's surrounded by neo-Nazis. They're going to be talking about the shit that people like me and the other people in the commentariat have been talking about for months. Okay, the Washington Post and New York Times are all of a sudden going to discover this new information about Zelensky that they had no idea about before. And it's all an effort to shift the blame for this disaster. And the disaster is, of course, the total destruction of the Ukraine nation. And it's all very funny to be watching these despicable pieces of shit pointing at each other in blame, trying to lay the blame on the other. But the fact is, it's all of these people. The Biden administration, the intelligence community, the Pentagon, NATO, Zelensky, the goons around him, they are all equally responsible for the destruction of the Ukraine nation. And they are just, running around trying to pin the blame on the other guy when they all carry that burden of guilt equally. And the thing that is so despicable is that so many lives will have been lost for nothing. The flower of Ukraine, the young men who are the future of any nation, will have been killed for nothing. For the incompetence and greed and hubris and arrogance of a bunch of people far away from those battlefields. I mean, I was laughing at the beginning of this video because it is comical, but at the same time it's enraging. To see the destruction of this country for nothing. That's the worst of it. You see, sometimes you have to make great sacrifices and bear great destruction for a great goal. And this is understandable. It's the price to reach difficult goals. But in this case, the Ukrainians, they weren't going to win anything, not the nation, not the people, by going into a war with Russia. They couldn't win against Russia, and this was clear from the outset. And it wasn't merely that the Russians had a bigger army or more weapons or more artillery pieces. No, it was more than that. It was that the Russians recognized from the very beginning that this was a war to the death, and they had to win, and they were going to win at all costs, no matter what. They understood from the very beginning, but the Ukraine leadership, the Zelensky regime, they thought that this was like a TV show. Like they were going to go to war, and they'd all pretend to be Churchill, and they have a high old time, and they give speeches at the United Nations, and speeches here, speeches there, and everybody would think that they're so wonderful, and slogans, and all the rest of it. They didn't seem to realize that there would be actual death. And they carried forth this pointless war, this pointless provocation of the Russians that led to this war. And now they're trying to fix the blame on somebody else. As far as I'm concerned, they're all pieces of shit. And if it were up to me, I'd gather up the whole lot of them. The people in Washington, the people in Brussels, the people in Kiev, and I'd put them up in front of a firing squad. And you know who I'd have as the members of the firing squad? The mothers and the wives and the children of all those poor soldiers who died for nothing. They're the ones who should be picking up those rifles and aiming for the heart of these despicable beasts.